welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, I am Erin, and I like to do my makeup while talking about some of my favorite topics, whether that be film, TV, products, makeup, all of the above. And if you're not new here, welcome back. Okay, so today we're going to be doing makeup. Get ready with me, although I'm going nowhere because of this quarantine, while also talking about some of my favorite movies from Alfred Hitchcock. Okay, so if you're interested in that, please stick around. I'm going to just be sharing the movies I've seen by Alfred Hitchcock and giving my recommendations and thoughts on them, and if you should, check them out as well. So, stick around, we're getting started. Alright, I'm going to start with primer first before I do my eyes first. I like to let my primer sit and get into the skin while I'm doing my eyes. And this is a matte primer. I usually don't go for matte setting, but I did a really dewy base today with my skincare, and I'm also doing just a tinted moisturizer, so I figured I'd go with it with something. Well, now I'm using foundation today too, which is a satin finish mixed with my tinted moisturizer. I'm gonna mix those two today, so kind of taming a little bit of the dewiness. Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to start with my eyes first, which is what I usually like to do. I'm going to be using two palettes today, and we'll get into that. If you see me looking over to the side, it's because I have some notes to look at as I'm talking about these movies from Alfred Hitchcock, and sort of what are my thoughts on them, recommendation, etc., etc. Okay, so let's get started with an eye primer base, and then we're also going to look at these movies. I'm going to use my palette that I'm using today, Mirror, to kind of help me along the way. All right, so firstly, Alfred Hitchcock. Let's a little background. Alfred Hitchcock is a very famous director and filmmaker. Probably nearly everyone in the world has probably heard of him. Very famous. He worked from like the 1920s all the way up to like the 70s, 80s, I believe, maybe 70s. So he is an English director and filmmaker. Many of his films that he directed or was a part of are included on list of best films of all time. He's a very influential director in history, and I'm going to talk about some of the films I've seen from him and why I like them, excuse me, and what's so great about them. Okay, so you may have heard of him because he did Psycho, and Psycho's like one of the most famous movies ever in the world. So the list of movies I've seen from Alfred Hitchcock include Psycho, Vertigo, Rope, Strangers on a Train, Rear Window, The Birds, and Rebecca. So those are the ones I'm going to be talking about today as I'm doing my makeup. Let's get started. So I'm going to start with Psycho. This is probably the most famous, one of the most famous ones on this list. Even if you don't know about Alfred Hitchcock or have an interest in older movies, you've probably heard of this movie before. I'm going to start with this palette. Actually, it's from Glazed. It's the Neptune palette. I've never used it before, so I'm going to be trying it out today. And I'm going to start with that color there. Alright, so a little information about Psycho. Psycho was made in 1960, and it's a psychological horror film directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and it is based on the novel of the same name from 1959 by Robert Bloch. Hope I'm saying that right. It stars Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh, John Gavin, Vera Mills, and Martin Balsam. Okay, what's so special about this movie, early horror movie? This movie is so influential as far as horror movies, and also as far as like sort of kind of developing the slasher genre. I mean, it's that influential, and it has really influenced so many directors, filmmakers, storytellers with horror and with the slasher genre. This is like the start of it. So it's really interesting because it's based on this novel, Psycho, and it focuses on a story of Marion Crane as she's stealing this large sum of money from her employer and running away. And she ends up at the Bates Motel and meets Norman Bates, one of the most influential characters in horror history, in filmmaking history as well. And the thing that's so interesting about this film is that it's just really well told and well written, both the film and the novel, and it really engages the viewer to be really interested in this character of Norman Bates, and also in his mother. Why do I like this? Number one, the story, the plot is very good. It's just that tell of how a person can go mad and what kind of actions they take from that. We have really good actors in this. That's another positive for this film. Anthony Perkins just does such a good job. The acting in the film is great. It's such a surprise that this did not win any Academy Awards, especially Anthony Perkins. I think he just bodies this character so well and just does a good job. It's a darn shame he didn't get any Academy Awards for this role. Another thing is we have Janet Leigh, who is seemingly our lead actress, and she gets killed off in the famous shower scene. Okay, and so that was something else that kind of was something that was really well done, is this trope, kill off the main actress, or who you think is the main actress, not even halfway through the movie, I say. So that was really a good thing, good move on Alfred Hitchcock's part of shocking the audience and sort of killing off your main actress in a very, like, the most parodied, most copied, most influential shower scene kills of all time. Another thing I really love is the score, the musical score, especially, you know, that killing score that we hear in Psycho has been used over and over and over and over and over and over. Very well known and very well loved, and just really well done and just perfect. I really have no negatives for Psycho. I think it's just really well done. It's a really good movie, and I enjoy it. Okay, let's move on to the next movie, which is a 1958 movie called Vertigo. It is a psychological thriller film, also directed by Norman Bates, by Alfred Hitchcock. Ooh, that is so soft. Sorry, see that? Starring James Stewart and Kim Novak. This is the story of a former police officer who develops a fear of heights, and he can no longer work as a police officer. He gets hired to investigate the wife of a rich man named, what is his name? Gavin Elster, and he just gets hired to follow his wife around. So within the movie, we have this former police officer following this wife whose behavior is kind of seemingly erratic. Okay, very, very good film. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Why do I like it? I think that the plot and the story is pretty good because it's not, the plot is not as sort of basic as it seems. Once you get into it, there are some twists and some surprises that even someone like me that usually can see twists coming or can kind of guess, I didn't see this twist coming. I think they did it really well. I think the actors are totally amazing. James Stewart, Kim Novak did a very good job. And so the plot is really, really good. The acting is really, really good. I think if you haven't seen it or heard of it, you might get a shock from this. Again, it was made in 1958, so that was quite a long time ago. But I just think that the twists are what make this movie so entertaining, as well as the acting and the story itself. This one is also based on a novel, which may be the reason why many of these stories are so strong with Alfred Hitchcock. He does do a lot of things, movies that were based on novels or plays or stuff like that. But I think that this one is really well done because we have those twists. Some people may be able to figure it out, but I personally was surprised by the ending. And I think the ending is really well done and perfect. And it goes with the kind of development of our character throughout. I think this one is really great because it develops a character that just starts to get this obsession, which is the character played by James Stewart. He just really gets obsessed with this woman that he's following, and you know, they fall in love and all that good stuff. There's a romance element to it, but I think the main part of it is the psychological part, where you're just thinking of the obsession with the main character, the main male character has with this female character, and like the mystery behind what she's really doing and how she really is. So the wife of the man, there's a twist with that. You have to watch it to figure it out. I won't spoil it. Not to say that this whole video is not spoiler free. That's not true, but I just, if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil that part, but really you should watch it. It's really, really good. Okay, on to the next. All right, the next film on this list is the film titled Rope. It is a 1948 psychological crime thriller based on a play by of the same name by Patrick Hamilton. Okay, so the play was actually based off a real-life murder of a boy named Bobby Franks. I believe that murder took place in like 1924, and basically it's crazy. These two college students, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, thought they could get away with the perfect crime, and they planned the murder of a young boy around, I think, the age of 14, and thought that they had committed the perfect crime. They were going to commit the perfect crime. They planned for it. Really, they had no reason for this murder besides just feeling how it would be to murder someone and thinking that they were superior and that they could get away with murder, basically. That was their whole motive for this. So that's sort of the basis for the play, as well as with the movie, which is based off the play, is coming from this real life crime, this real life murder. Okay, so it is starring James Stewart again, John Dahl, Farley Granger, and Joan Chandler. This one I really enjoyed. I think after Psycho, this is probably my favorite Alfred Hitchcock film, because we really are getting into the psyche of these characters, two characters that are killing for no apparent reason. They have no motive, really, besides the fact that they want to commit the perfect crime. They want to see how it is. They think they're superior and nobody's going to catch them. So the movie follows two young men, Brandon and Philip, who are strangle one of their former classmates, named David Kentley. Okay, they commit this crime as a part of an intellectual exercise to see what it's like to murder. So basically, they have no real reason for this. They just want to see what it's like to murder. And for the art of it, can they commit the perfect murder and get away with the crime without getting caught? So yeah, that's the basic plot for this movie, which I find quite interesting. There's also some undertones that they might be like lovers in the movie. I don't know if that was the intent, but it's almost kind of, that's what it feels like to me. It's kind of hinted at a little, which this movie came out in 1948, so way before that was kind of an accepted thing. So they hide the body in this large chest and proceed to have a party, a little dinner, get-together party, which they invite the man they strangled's family and friends and fiance to this party, and they're all eating off the chest with the dead body in it, unaware that someone they love, someone connected to them, is in this chest, dead. And the crime was committed by Brandon and Philip, who are hosting the party. They also invite their old professor, played by James Stewart, who actually sort of prompted the ideal to kill somebody and commit the perfect crime to prove your superiority from his lectures while they were in college. But obviously the professor was talking about hypothetical situations and didn't really mean to kill someone. So in the movie, throughout the movie, the professor is the one that kind of catches on to the atmosphere of the party, and them keep talking about David and he's missing. And as the worry gets hyped up more and more, the dad is like, where's my son? His fiance is at the party, is very concerned about why he never showed up, and the professor is the only one that is kind of connecting the dots that something isn't right. So why do I love this? I think it's an interesting concept, and the fact that it was based on a kind of based on a true story, is really interesting as well. I think it's really well done how they put this story together, and based it off of something that really happened, and it could really happen. You know, why does someone kill someone? What are the motives? Why are they doing that? And to prove that they were superior but by committing the perfect crime, it's just very interesting thought and concept. I'm going to be using the Iman Luxury Concealing Foundation. I used to love this, so I'm going to be trying to reignite that love for this. I haven't used it in a while. That's a lot. And mixing it in with my NYX Bear With Me Tinted Skin Veil, which is like a tinted moisturizer. But anyways, back to this. I think the actors in this are also just superb. For some reason, I just love Farley Granger. He's going to be on this list again, as well as James Stewart. He's already been on this list, and he'll be on this list again. I think he worked really well with Alfred Hitchcock, as well as Farley Granger. They worked with him multiple times on different projects, and they just give a great performance, as well as John Dahl. He did a really great job in this as well. The acting is superb. It's perfect. I think also the concept is just kind of, it's almost a little sick, which is great for the psychological film, to have your college mate in the chest invite his family and fiance over for a party where they're eating off this chest. And it's just really, it's if you think about it, it's interesting. It's sick, but it's interesting. So that's why I like this movie. I really enjoy it. I've seen it several times. It's very old, but that doesn't take away from the movie at all. It's very well done. And if you haven't seen it and you like older movies, definitely check it out. Alfred Hitchcock did a great job with this one, as well as the original creator of the story. Alright, so let's get on to the next film on this list. Alright, the next film I'm going to talk about is actually called Strangers on a Train. It is a 1951 psychological thriller based on a novel of the same name by Patricia Highsmith. And it's about two strangers that meet on a train. One is a tennis player, and the other is a psychopath. So these two strangers on the train are simply talking and having a conversation about people in their lives that they kind of want to get rid of. They just, people that are making their lives harder. And the psychopath of the two suggests that they commit murders by trading the people they want to get rid of, killing those people, and it'll be a perfect crime because they have no connection to the other person's burden. And the tennis player, thinking that he's just joking, is like, oh yeah, sure, you know, kind of agreeing without really agreeing. And the psychopath takes that literally and kills the tennis player's wife. So then we have this story where now the tennis player was the only one really with a motive. He's suspected of this crime, and he also is not killing the other guy's burden, the psychopath's father that he wanted to get killed. And so the psychopath is just messing with him and basically like, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to get you arrested for killing your wife. So this one stars, again, Farley Granger, Ruth Roman, and Robert Walker, who's playing the psychopath. And I just really like this story as well. I've seen this one multiple times. I really enjoy Farley Granger. I think he's a great actor, and I just enjoy looking at him. He's pretty handsome. And I like Farley Granger and Robert Walker in this. They just do a really great job playing their parts. Robert Walker really sort of showcases these. Clearly, he's like office rocker within this movie type of character, a crazed, sort of indulgent man who wants to kill his father, and he does it great. He really seems like a psychopath. I think the concept is really cool, like two strangers committing a crime for each other, and they have no connection, they have nothing in common, and if they do the crimes, they won't be suspected because they have no connection to the other person's family or friends or anything, the other person's life. So I think the story and the concept is really great. It works really well. I like the ending as well. And I just think that the actors really pull it for me and do it for me, as well as the story, which makes this one of my top movies from Alfred Hitchcock as well. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's really, really good, and I definitely recommend it. Again, if you like horror, like not horror, but psychological thriller type of movies, as well as older movies, definitely check this one out. I'm going to be popping on this concealer, which I've never used before, but I'm trying it out. Hopefully it's a good color. While I'll talk about the next one on my list, which is The Birds. This one is a 1963 horror thriller film after Psycho. Excuse me. So we see Alfred Hitchcock getting more into those horror elements. Although some of his other films have had some like scary thriller type moments, with Psycho and The Birds, we really see a little bit more horror themed horror movies from him. Ooh. Okay, there we go. So The Birds is loosely based on a 1952 story, also called The Birds, by Daphne du Maurier. Hopefully I'm saying that name right. But it's loosely based on it. It's not exactly the same. There are added characters and I think added plots within this, but it's basically the same. These birds in a small town are attacking people for seemingly no reason at all. They just start attacking and killing people. So the basic story is the same, but it's kind of changed from the original story. It's starring Rod Taylor and Tippi Hedren. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And that was her screen debut, actually. And the screenplay is by Evan Hunter. So the story follows this small town with a series of bird attacks happening in the town. I'm just wetting my sponge again. And these birds are violently and fatally attacking people in the town. And so we have this old age conflict in this movie of man versus nature. We don't really know why the birds are really attacking people, but maybe the humans caused it. We don't really know why these birds are doing this, why they go crazy like this, but they just start attacking and killing people. So why do I like it? What's some positive things about this? Why should you check it out? I do enjoy the story and the actors. Again, the stories are always usually strong with Alfred Hitchcock. Not much you're going to be left wanting for with his stories. I think they're really fleshed out. And that might be, again, because a lot of them are based on other stories or plays. It's an interesting story. Why are these birds attacking people, killing people? We don't really know, and it does give that element of, like, horror, like this scared feeling of that could happen one day. We don't know. I like the actors as well. I think they do pretty good, especially Tippi, considering that was her screen debut. And her first time, like, in the movie like that, she does a really great job portraying the main female character. And this one is a double-edged sword. It's one that I think I like but also dislike, which are the effects done in the movie. I think for 1963, the effects are really actually pretty good. They hold up pretty well considering the fact that they didn't really have CGI and stuff like that. And they were using things like yellow screen to get these effects of the birds attacking people and like these mass bird attacks on the town. I think they did a really good job, which that also goes into my negative parts because it was 1963. It doesn't hold up that great nowadays, but considering when the time it was made, I think it's actually really good. So it's a negative and a positive. Some of it does kind of look a little silly, but it doesn't necessarily take away from the film. Like, I can still pop this and enjoy it, and I think it's a stellar film, really good. And again, it's just Alfred Hitchcock was always pushing the boundaries of horror and thriller and psychological films. How can we push it a little further? How can we make it a little scary? And there are some pretty frightening scenes in this, like when the mom of the main male character finds her neighbor with his eyes plucked out. I mean, that would be a really scary situation in real life. So I think it's really well done, basically. Alright, I'm going to move on to blush and highlight. Am I going to set my concealer today? I think not. I'm not going anywhere. If it fades, oh well. Okay, I have 2 more films to talk about from Alfred Hitchcock that I've seen. The next one is Rebecca. This is actually the second film after Psycho first. This is the second film I saw from Alfred Hitchcock. It's a 1940s romantic psychological thriller based on a 1938 novel of the same title. And this is Alfred Hitchcock, actually his first transition to Hollywood productions. I'm using this blush here. Here's the colors. So this one stars Laurence Olivier and Joan Fontaine, shot in black and white. An inexperienced young woman meets this rich widow named Maximum de Winter, who's played by Laurence Olivier. And they start kind of seeing each other, and eventually she becomes his second wife. So he had a wife previously who died, and the story kind of centers around his dead wife, almost. His dead wife and his new wife. He takes his wife after they get married. So they met at this like hotel or something, and they got married. It's kind of random. They just get married. I guess they fall in love. They get married. He takes her back to his mansion, where he introduces her to Mrs. Danvers, which is the housekeeper, played by Judith Anderson, who is still like very devoted and clearly obsessed with the previous Mrs. De Winter, and she's like fiercely loyal to her even though she is dead. And so Mrs. Danvers really is just really cold to the new wife, the new Mrs. De Winter, played by Joan Fontaine. She's very like mean to her and keeps on mentioning the previous wife and making her really doubt her husband's love for her. So Mrs. De Winter eventually becomes convinced that her husband still loves his dead wife, and we get some twists in this movie. We get some really chilling moments actually, and I think that the acting done by the 3 main actors, Olivier, Fontaine, and also Anderson, who plays the maid, or the caretaker, whatever you want to call her, is so well done. And Anderson does a really good job portraying this woman that's kind of insane in a way, or obsessed with the former wife. I think after Psycho, this being the second movie after Psycho that I've watched, it really got me interested more in Alfred Hitchcock's movies. It's not my favorite of his movies, but it's really good. Actually, I think this is the only movie from Alfred Hitchcock that got a Best Picture award at the Academy Awards. It got the Best Picture Academy Award, and it's the only one of his movies that got it, which is almost kind of insane to think about. I personally would have chosen other ones, but I do see the appeal of this one is very good. It's what got me with Psycho and Rebecca. These are the 2 movies that got me more interested in seeing more of Hitchcock's work. So I think that this movie gives a really desperate feeling from the characters, how they portray the character, how the actors portray the characters. And plus, once we get to the house of this rich guy, the husband, we almost get a haunted house type of feel from it, even though it's not a haunted house movie. So I like all of those elements that pushed into it, and it's very fitting. It's a very fitting story. I like it. Really enjoyed the ending as well. Perfect. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It is one of the oldest ones. I think it's the oldest one on the list, from 1940. And it is black and white, but that doesn't take away from it. It's very enjoyable even now. So check it out if you haven't seen it. Really good. Alright, on to the last movie on my list that I've seen. Let's get into it. Now I'm taking the highlight of this. Alright, the last movie on my list is Rear Window, which is another really great movie. This one is often touted as one of his best, but a lot of his movies are touted as #1 or best movie of all time. So Psycho's had that title, Vertigo, Rebecca, Rear Window. I guess it just depends on your opinion, but this one is really highly loved and highly rated, and I'll tell you why I think that is. So this, first of all, is a 1954 mystery thriller film directed by Alfred Hitchcock, obviously, based on Cornell Woolrich's 1942 short story called It Had to Be Murder. Alright, so this one stars, again, James Stewart. I told you him and Hitchcock seem to have some sort of partnership. He's in a lot of Hitchcock's movie, and also he's just a great actor. It also stars Grace Kelly, Wendell Corey, Thelma Ritter, and Raymond Burr. Okay, so what is this story about? It's following a photographer who is recovering from a broken leg and is stuck in his apartment. So he picks up the hobby of watching his neighbors, spying on his neighbors, as he's stuck, and he's looking out of his rear window, which is where we get our title, and it's just observing and watching his neighbor, people watching with his neighbors. So the main character is named Jeff. He's stuck in his apartment, and one night he sees some suspicious, and hears some suspicious things, from his neighbor Thorwald, played by Burr. Later he notices that Thorwald's wife is missing. She's gone, and apparently she's visiting some family members, but Jeff just does not believe this because of what he has heard and saw as he's been watching. So Jeff believes that Thorwald has killed his neighbor. And if I'm saying the name wrong, please forgive me. I've only seen this one twice, quite a while ago. But anyways, so he believes that his neighbor has killed his wife, and he brings his theory to his girlfriend, Lisa, played by Grace Kelly, the company nurse working to take care of him, played by Ritter, as well as his detective friend, Tom, played by Wendell Corey. Okay, so what are some of the positives for this? Let me look at my notes. Alright, so this one is considered one of Hitchcock's best films because I think, in my opinion, the story is just so well done. It really is kind of getting you to think, what if this really happened to you and you had a neighbor and you noticed something about them, that they committed a crime? What would you do? I think it's really well done. The story and also the direction of the film. Alfred Hitchcock directed it really well. The set's really nice. The story is good. The sound is great. And it is kind of almost a little bit scary in a way, thinking of if you noticed a crime, what would you do? Or, I mean, and you couldn't prove it because you don't have any proof, but you witnessed it. What could you do? So the acting is great from Stewart and Kelly. Obviously, Jon Stewart's been on this list quite a few times, and each and every time I'm going to say it, his acting is great. I mean, he does a great job portraying the character, as he always does. And the side characters are also really great, and we get some very suspenseful moments in this, and we get a great mystery kind of crime thriller as well. So those are the really positive things. The ending to the film is also really great, where I won't spoil it completely, but we get a confrontation, and with the conclusion, you know, did he really kill his wife or not? I think it's done really well. What I love about this film, though, the main thing is that it capitalized and made popular this trope that we see so often nowadays of your neighbor being a killer. You witnessed a crime, but you don't really have any proof, and the character is either forced to see this crime because they're stuck at home, or they just happen to see it through the window, and now you know that your neighbor has committed a crime or has murdered, but you don't have any proof. And how can you prove that? And a lot of time with this trope, the killer either sees the person spying on them, or is tipped off, and sometimes not. Sometimes the killer doesn't know that the person has seen, but this person now has to prove that they saw this person commit the crime, even though they don't really have any evidence that that neighbor committed the crime. So this trope of my neighbor killed someone, or the weird rear window trope, is really good, and we see it nowadays in many movies such as Summer of '84, Disturbia, are some of the few that pop into my head that I really liked. So this movie really capitalized on that. It wasn't the first to do it, I don't believe, but it's one of the most popular, and one that I think is sort of is the most given tribute to of other movies that have sort of done this trope as well. That is one that is kind of, the tribute is given to that particular movie from Alfred Hitchcock. So that was my whole list of movies from Alfred Hitchcock. Of course, my makeup is not done, but that's okay. I'll finish it off camera. I just want to end off with my favorites from this list, like what are my top ones. Although I love all of these movies, they're all really great. Check all of these out if you haven't, while you're in this quarantine state that we're in nowadays. If you need something to, Lord, if you need something to do, definitely check out these movies from Alfred Hitchcock. But my favorites, I would say my top ones definitely are Psycho, Rope, Strangers on a Train, and Rear Window. And then after that comes Vertigo, The Birds, and Rebecca, I would say is my least favorite, although still that one is one I highly recommend. Definitely something to watch. So if you're interested in any of these, definitely check them out. You will not be disappointed. Well, that's the end of this video. I'm going to end it here. No need to keep on talking. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up below, subscribe, and also check out some other videos on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.